Shalom. I want to start off by giving all honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakah Kwadash. Double honors to my elders and apostles at Great Millstone. Shalom to the elect, the ones out there doing this work diligently and chiefly keeping the faith, making your making your calling and your election sure. Okay, coming back at you with another video through the spirit of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. Hopefully this is edifying. This is a part 2 to the series I'm doing on a channel called Edible Plants. All right. Now, the title of this lesson is 13 edible plants you can still find in the winter. All right. Now, let me get this precept real quick before I go into that. All right. This is Genesis chapter 1 and verse 29. It says, "And Yahweh said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, and the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat." Okay, it should be consumed. So the Lord is the one that gave us these plants, man. The scripture says what? The Lord put healing in the earth. He that is wise will not abhor them. Okay, that's another precept. All right. So just wanted to get that precept out there, to inform the elect or to inform whoever is listening that these plants are vital. These plants are lawful for us to use for meat to be consumed, to heal ourselves. The time that's coming upon the earth, this is some of the information that you might need, that you might have to put to use, especially when you don't receive that MOTB. All right. So this is not going to be a long lesson. We're going to get right into it. Let's start off. It says, if you're serious about wilderness survival, then you have to get serious about learning plants. Being able to positively identify herbaceous plants, vines, shrubs, and trees, both with and without their leaves, will give you all sorts of advantages when it comes to survival. And that's facts, right? You will be at an advantage. Many people will be out there, going crazy because there's no food in the stores, but only a few people will realize that there's food all around you. Okay? Continuing on, it says, plants can provide many fire-making essentials, as well as drinking water and medicines. But the biggest resource plants can provide us with in the winter is food. It says, but the biggest resource plants can provide us with in the winter is food. To be able to find food in the winter, out in the wilderness, hey man, that's hard to do, especially if you're detached from society, It says, in the coldest season, we need all the calories we can get, and the right plants can help accomplish this when hunting, trapping, and fishing endeavors aren't going well or aren't an option. See, when fishing is not an option, when hunting is not an option, you can always count on the plants that's around, okay? Until the Lord come and burn them off the face, burn them up, with that nuclear fire, okay? And Lord willing, we in those chariots by then, It says, well, the elect, they're going to be in the chariots, when that nuclear missile fire comes, because the Lord is going to protect them. Hopefully, I'm a part of that number. All right, continuing on, it says, here are some of the best wild edibles to keep an eye out for this winter. So number 1, cattails, okay? This is what cattails look like. All right, you can find those in like farm areas, in rural areas, in swamps. Let's continue on reading about the cattails real quick. We're going to speed this up. It says, cattails can grow just about anywhere there's fresh water, and you can use the root stock for soup or grind it into flour. It says, these swamp-loving plants bear a number of edible sections throughout the year, but the part you'll want in the winter is the starchy root stock. Dig them up before the swamp freezes solid and you can take advantage of this valuable starch source. It says identifying features. Look for the iconic brown seed heads that have exploded into a mass ivory-colored fluff, which makes for great tinder. These grass-like plants will be 3 to 9 feet tall with an oval cross-section to the lower stalk. You'll find them growing in wet conditions. Range. It says various cattail species are found worldwide. The common cattail is found in the lower 48, as well as throughout southern Alaska and Canada. It says best bet, the common cattail is the largest species and it has the widest distribution. Okay, edible uses. The white starchy material inside the long brown root stalks can be scraped out and used to thicken soups and stews. It can also be dried and ground into flour. While you collect the root stalks, keep an eye out for little sprouts at the base of the plant. These small whitish spikes can be steamed, boiled, or fried as a tasty vegetable. It says warning. Several species of larger iris plants also grow in wet conditions and bear rootstocks. These are poisonous and do not have a corn dog seed head. Make sure each plant you take has a cattail seed head attached to it. Make sure each plant you take has a cattail seed head attached to it, and you can't go wrong. So you got to make sure every plant that you take, when you're harvesting this cattail, it got to have that furry seed on it right there. That's how you know it's a cattail. Okay. Continuing on. It says rose hips. These are what rose hips look like. Okay. Rose hips. It says, even in the winter, it says rose hips are an excellent source of vitamin E and C. Even in the winter, there's something sweet about wild roses. When the birds don't gobble them all, you can carefully collect the rose hips from their thorny bushes. Identifying features. This perennial species of rose is a woody plant that has finely toothed, pinnately compound leaves that can persist into winter. The stalks have alternate branching and sharp, curved thorns. The branches have bright red rose hips that bear an average of 8 to 12 pale yellow seeds per fruit. Range, it says both invasive and native wild roses are found throughout the northern hemisphere. Wild roses favor open ground and pastures. Best bet, native to Asia, the multiflora rose can now be found globally. Its ripe red rose hips taste like sweet fruit leather. Okay. Edible uses for the rose hip, it says the pulp and skin of the rose hips can be eaten raw, or the entire rose hip can be steeped to make rose tea. The tangy, sweet, red-colored fruits are a good source of vitamin E and also a vitamin C powerhouse, containing 7 times your daily allowance. Persimmons is number 3. Remember, we're going into the plants that you can find in the winter. It says one of the most winter hardy fruits is the wild persimmon. If you taste one before it's ripe, the fruit's sour and astringent qualities will flood your taste buds with a horrible cottony sensation. But if you wait until the fruit becomes a gooey, wrinkled mess, late fall through January, it is unbelievably sweet. Okay? It says you can eat persimmons raw, turn them into jam, or ferment them into wine. Identifying features. It says the American persimmon is a deciduous tree with alternate simple leaves and small orange fruits that contain large brown seeds. A related species with larger fruits can be found in Japan and neighboring countries. The scientific name of this fruit is Diospyros, which means food of the gods. If you are concerned that they are overselling the quality of the fruit, you haven't tasted a ripe one. Range, it says wild persimmons are found in eastern half of the U.S. So you can find them. I'm in Gary, so you can find them you know, towards like New York, over in that area. Okay. It says best bet. It says look for very wrinkled fruits in late fall, persisting into winter. Typically, the rougher they look, the sweeter they taste. In late fall, you'll have to watch out for unripe fruit, which will give you a strong case of cottonmouth. In winter, you'll have to make sure you don't eat a rotten one. Trust your eyes and, more importantly, your nose to avoid rotten fruit. Edible uses. It says the completely ripe native persimmon fruits are a sticky, gooey, sweet treasure trove. The fruits of this eastern tree have 127 calories and a full day's vitamin C per cup of pulp. Eat them raw, turn them into jam, or ferment them into golden colored wine. All right, number 4, it says pine needles and cones. It says this common needle bearing tree can provide tea and an edible inner bark. All right, it says the common pine tree produces needles that are great for tea. The pine cones, which sometimes contain small nuts. Identifying features, says needles grow in clumps of 2 to 5 needles, and pine cones are found on more mature trees. Range, meaning where it's located, says various pine species can be found in open woods and mountains throughout much of North America. Related edible species can be found in America, Europe, and Asia. Okay, edible uses, it says there are many species of pine throughout the Northern Hemisphere, and most are capable of providing 2 winter survival staples: pine needle tea and pine bark flour. It says the tea is easy to produce. Grab a tuft of green needles, rip or chop them into small pieces, and drop them into some very hot water. Don't boil the needles. This makes the tea bitter, and the heat destroys the vitamin C. Just steep the needles in hot water for 10 minutes and enjoy. 1 cup of tea made from 1 ounce of needles should provide roughly 4 times your daily allowance of vitamin C. And don't forget about the bark. Shave off the inner layer of bark right next to the wood. This layer is rubbery and cream colored. Dry the strips until brittle and grind them into flour. 1 pound of this flour has about 600 calories. It has a mild pine flavor and is good for extending your food supply by blending in with other flours. You may also be lucky enough to find some larger pine cones with nuts inside of them. These are a valuable food with a high calorie content. It says, warning, skip the tea from loblolly pine in the eastern U.S. and the ponderosa pine in the American Southwest, as recent studies suggest that they may be somewhat toxic. And women who are or might be pregnant shouldn't drink pine needle tea from any species as it may be abortive. All right. So if your wife is pregnant, skip this tea, or skip this edible plant, which is called pine needles and cones. Okay. That's if she's pregnant, because you don't want to, hurt your baby. It says the nuts and bark, however, are safe for consumption. So the bark and the nuts are safe for consumption on the pine needles and cones if your wife is pregnant. But if your wife not pregnant, hey, go for it, man. This is gonna be the last one, and then I'm gonna wrap it up, and then continue it on in another video because I don't want this to be too long. The 5th edible plant is called wild onions and garlic. All right, it says wild onions and garlic are easy to find and delicious, and there are more than a dozen different species across the U.S. It says spicy and delicious. Wild onions turn your wild caught fish and game into a meal fit for a king. Diverse and frost resistant, these plants provide great wild seasoning throughout the winter seasons. Grab a little spade and a bag to hold your prize because the wild onion is one of nature's superfoods. You see, this wild onion. It says identifying features. Your first step to make sure a plant is really an onion or garlic is looking for the bulbous root and rounded stem that onions and garlic share. Once it passes that test, go to the scratch and sniff phase of it's like it. Go to the scratch and sniff phase of testing. Scratch the bulb or bruise the green tops, and you should immediately smell a familiar oniony odor. The plant contains numerous sulfur compounds, which mix with the salt in your tears to create a weak sulfuric acid. The reason why your eyes burn while dismembering these plants. Range, it says, there are more than a dozen different species of wild onion growing throughout North America. Okay. Edible uses, it says, tender tops and juicy bulbs can be eaten raw or cooked. I like them finely chopped as an aromatic aromatic seasoning ingredient in both salads and cooked dishes. Warning, all right? It says onions and garlic are a group of plants that are edible to humans and genuinely very tasty, but don't just wolf down everything shaped like an onion. The broader family they belong to is the lily family, which can be a problem for foragers because some lilies are toxic and resemble onions at first glance. So I'm going to continue this, in another video. I just wanted to do the first 5 real quick. Don't want this to be too long. Hopefully this was edifying. I'm going to end it by giving all honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rakah Kwadash. Double honors once again to my elders and apostles at Great Millstone. Shalom.